Hey, what's up guys? In today's video, I am going to go over my team's acquisition phases and stages. So I'm going to go through the whole acquisition process from when the seller lead comes in and they're interested in selling their home and your first conversations with them to closing the deal. Big picture. Because I think it's very important, to know in your head what to expect in all the stages. I even have a sheet for my team where they can follow the stages and phases. And the purpose of it is to make sure that we are controlling this conversation and this negotiation. Okay, so as a person who is doing acquisitions, who is trying to buy property direct to sellers, the first interaction with the seller is simply to develop an interest in selling their home. Now, what I mean by that is finding out, are they interested? Were they originally thinking of selling their home before they saw your advertisement, your text, your cold call? I want to know what's got them interested in selling. I also want you to get them to like you. So in this first stage, it's developing an interest in selling and getting the seller to like you by building rapport, finding out a little bit about them personally, because remember, this is a people first business. So after you've developed the interest in selling and you've built the rapport, now you want to get into their motivation. So I want to make sure that there's some rapport built in that conversation before I start asking them, well, why are you interested in selling? There's so many scripts out there. It's funny, like I see where it's the first question they ask, why are you selling? I think asking the question, why are you selling, is so abrasive. There are so many different ways you can get it out of the seller. My favorite way to get it out of the seller is, what were your original plans with this property when you bought it? That is a really good roundabout way to hear the story of their ownership with this property. And normally the motivation will come out. Well, I bought the property 10 years ago and first we were living in it and then I got, my job got transferred. So I ended up putting a tenant in it. And to be honest, I never sought out to be a landlord. So now I'm thinking about selling. Well, there you go. You have a tired landlord on your hands, right? So it's a roundabout way to ask. Another way is just saying, oh, so what's got you interested in selling? So I don't like, why are you interested in selling? Or why are you selling? I don't like that question. I like, what's got you interested in selling? It's just a softer way to say it. So now it's time to get the property's condition. So this is where you're going to figure out if the motivation actually lies in the condition of the home. So if the seller doesn't give you any kind of sob story in the previous phase, the next phase is determining the condition of the property, and sometimes the motivation lies in the repairs that the property needs. So the seller might have said, oh, nothing's going on with this property. I mean, you just sent me a text and I thought, maybe I would see what you have to offer. Then the next is, well, tell me a little bit, about the condition, and you start asking some details, and you might find out that the house is in total disrepair, and that repair bill might be so high that maybe the seller doesn't want to go through the effort or spend the money to fix it. So this is where you might find out what the true motivation was. It might actually be in the condition of the property. Now, the next phase is the process overview. So what does it look like to work with you? And anyone listening to this video has their own process, but this is where I would tell the seller that, great, I've got some good details on this property, probably enough to come up with a firm offer price. So what I'm going to do is next, when I hang up this phone, I'm going to go look up comparable sales in the area and come up with a fair offer based off the comparable sales that I find. If you like this price, if the price I give you is acceptable, the next step would be that I'm going to send you a contract. Once I send you a contract, I'm going to send it to you on DocuSign so you can sign it right there with a click of the button. After I have a signed contract, I will go ahead and schedule my inspector for the property and we can go inspect the property. So right there, I let the seller know the next stages so they know how this works, what to expect. I first let them know that I am not going to inspect it before I get a signed contract. I did it in a very assertive, polite way, but I'm letting them know I want a signed contract first, and I'll make it very easy to sign that contract. Then, from here, the seller knows what to expect, and I end the call. So all the phases I just went through can all be done in your first call with the seller after you've determined they're a lead. This is usually your first call, and it's going to be your lengthiest call. Now, my team has an awesome script, and I've made it available to you at www.laurenhardyco.com. This script is these exact phases. So I have everything that we say in all of these initial phases of the seller, first call. So I have that script available to you if you want to go ahead and download it. The next call we make to the seller is actually a little different than what you might think. So instead of just delivering one price, I start with a range. So I give them a range, and anything within that range that they'll accept is a price that I would accept. So I say, hey, Mrs. Seller, I looked at some comps. I saw some investors bought properties in the area, just like yours. And it looks like they are going for about $50,000 to $65,000. Does that price range make sense to you? And then I'm quiet. Don't say anything. If you have a hard time getting yourself to be quiet, put your hand over your mouth. Literally, I had to do this for myself, because anytime I would deliver an offer price, I always felt this need to justify my price. And that is a clear giveaway that you think you're lowballing the seller. So don't do it. Deliver that price range with confidence and let them speak. So if the seller says, yes, this makes sense, then I say, okay, that's awesome. You know what? I need to go get with my partner, and I'm going to get you a firm price, and then I'll send you the contract. I'm going to call you back in about 10 minutes. So if the seller says yes, I hang up and I pace the room for 10 minutes. The reason I want that 10-minute is because I want the seller to think about the price that they would accept in that range. And I want to give them time, just enough time. 10 minutes later, we'll go to the next phase. What if the seller says no? Okay, so seller says, nope, that doesn't make sense to me. Now we stay in this phase. This phase doesn't go anywhere, and now we're in a follow-up pattern until I can get them in range. I don't bother to go to the next phase where I give them a firm number, because it doesn't matter. They're not going to take anything in that range. So from there, I would say, well, what would you accept? What would you accept? What's something that makes sense to you? And I would get that price, and I would say, okay, let me go talk to my partner, or let me talk to my underwriting department. Let me see if I can make that price work. I will get back to you. Maybe we messed up. Maybe we missed something. Let me ask you a couple more details about the condition of the home. If it's in better condition than I thought, maybe I could come up, in our range. So from there, I leave it really open that, hey, I'm going to give you a call back to follow up. And hey, if we decide that this range is kind of where we need to stick, I'm going to follow up with you anyway in case maybe you change your mind. But you got my number, right? And you got my email, so you can call me anytime. So I would leave the seller in that acquisition phase of a follow-up pattern. And that is where I would probably go to my CRM, and I would put a drip campaign that would automatically follow up with that seller, maybe anywhere from every 30 days to every 60 days. It just depends on the seller's, the outcome of that conversation and how motivated the seller really was. Maybe you follow up in a week. So that you would have to determine based on the seller's temperament and that call. So my CRM personally does it. I use Simply. That is an amazing CRM and has that capability for you. So if you are interested in Simply, make sure you let them know my code. It will get you 20% off. So that's the code virtual. Use the code virtual, get 20% off. So from there, I'm going to put the seller in a drip feed campaign where the seller is going to get automatically followed up by my CRM via text message and email, maybe anywhere from 2 weeks to 60 days. So I leave the seller in that phase of follow-up. But if the seller says, yeah, that range makes sense, Now 10 minutes goes by, right? And I'm going to give the seller a call, and then I'm going to give them the firm price. And it's probably going to be somewhere in the lower end of that range, right? Because I know that they're going to negotiate me up a little bit. So that's where you know, pretty much have a deal. If you can get the seller in your range, you're pretty close to having a deal. And once you guys agree on a price, I say, okay, I'm going to send a document out, you know, and it's an e-signature. So it's going to come to your email. And if you want, we could do it right now over the phone, and you can walk them through the steps of signing the contract. That's the best way. Before they can think too much, phone a friend, phone a realtor, lock it up right there. That's the final phase of acquisitions right there. That is when you've closed the deal. I highly recommend, as soon as they agree on that price, ask them, are you near a computer or, you know, your smartphone? I'm going to send you the contract right now, and I can get you on the inspection schedule next week if you do. So, you know, if you want to get that done and we can start getting this thing going, you know, the sooner your house will be sold. And try to get them to sign it at that moment. If they say, well, no, I want to review your contract for a little bit, you know, oh, okay, well, how about this? Do you want to go over the contract together? So then when you know, review it with, say, your husband or partner, or take time to think, you at least have all of your questions answered right now. And go over the contract with them if you can. You know, okay, I just sent you an email. Why don't you bring up the contract? Let's go over it line by line. And so that way you can address any questions and doubts they might have right then and there. And they might end up not having any questions and doubts. And they might say, you know, you might say, okay, so is everything clear? You get the contract, you're clear on that. And looks like you agree on the price. So what's left to, you know, what do you got to do next to sign this contract? They might say, I need to talk to my husband. Okay, are you clear? You know, are there any questions that I can answer before you go talking, you know, before you go to your husband, so that way you're fully prepared with all the questions he might ask you? You know, so at this point, you know, the seller, you might want to let them go and then follow up with them the next day. You know, oh, did you talk to your husband? Okay, are you ready? At this point, you need to really stay on the seller because you are close. You are right there. We've had sellers, they sign right then and there. We've had sellers that drag this part on for 6 months. So you really got to stay on top of the sellers, and utilizing a tool like a CRM that has that automatic follow-up is super, super important and helpful in your sales funnel management. It makes you very, very effective in your sales. To have everything automated for you. You could even set up task reminders to remind you to personally call the seller, you know, on a certain day. So utilizing task reminders and drip feed campaigns in this situation is super, super important. Anyways, that is it. That is the whole stage in acquisitions, all the stages, all the phases. And they're usually covered in about 3 phone calls. If it goes any more than 3 phone calls, now it's more of a follow-up phone call. So hopefully you are super, super clear on that. If you have any questions, make sure you ask them in the comment box. And if you want more help on, you know, closing deals, closing your wholesale deals, especially virtually, I want to help you. Go to www.virtualinvestingmastery. It is an awesome coaching program. I've had over 350 students run through it, and it is amazing. So go ahead, fill out an application today. Otherwise, hope you like this video, and I'll see you guys next time.